low grade 11, we're now going to do SQL in PAT. You'll see in the marking grid that we have to do SQL queries. I can see 3 over there. So I'm going to show you how to put SQL queries in your PAT. What is SQL? It's a structured query language. It's a whole programming language which is used in Microsoft Access or any other database program. So here's our database. We have one sport that is being played by many learners. Before we can use SQL, we have to connect, well, we have to have a data module that's connected to that database using the connection component, or you could just put all of these components that we have here, the ADO table and the ADO query components, you can put them straight onto the form, but at school we teach you to use a data module. It's more organized. So with a data module, you have to make sure that your connection component is connected. So we can do that with the connection string property, and you build it with a JET 4.0. This is already connected, so if it doesn't work, in other words, when you test the connection it doesn't work, then you must navigate to the database in your folder and open. We also like to remove the path and test again, and it's fine. So always make sure you do that, because it'll lose its connection when you move your program folder from one storage place to another. So at the moment in this data module we have 2 ADO table components which are connected already. You know how to do that, but now you must have a query component, and you go to the DB-Go section here on the right hand side. DB-Go, there it is, and you'll see TADO query. You click on that and you go and put one on that data module. It calls ADO query 1. It's a good idea to rename it. I've already put one on here and I've renamed it as query PAT. Another component that you need to have is a data source connected to the query PAT. But before we do that, make sure query PAT has its connection property over here on the left hand side. Must be the connection component over there. So you go and choose it there, click the drop down arrow, you will see it's there, and you click on it. Then for the data source, you find the data source in data access on the right hand side. There you'll see data source, you click on it and put one on. It's also a good idea, actually quite important, to rename the data source. I've already put one on here. There it is, and I've renamed it as DSR query PAT because it's connected to query PAT. We did the same with the ADO table components, remember? So now we're set up and ready to use query PAT. We've already got DM PAT in our main program in the uses section right at the top. You'll see DM PAT there. You obviously have to use DM PAT. There it is. That data module which is stored as DMPAT in the folder, it's saved on the hard drive as DMPAT. The data module itself must have a name property, so you make sure you have named that and you know what it is. It's defaulted to data module 1, but you change the name. I've changed it to PATDM. Anyway, so that's set up, everything ready, but now we also need a tab sheet. So I've created a new tab sheet here. Put on a database grid, and I'm going to connect that database grid in the properties section to the correct data source. So we go to properties of the database grid in the main program, we choose the data source property, we make sure we use the query component, DSR query PAT, there it is, patdm.dsr query PAT. So you'll see it will be listed there. You choose it and you know your database grid is connected, ready to display any queries that you might run. So we're going to do our first query. I've put some buttons here. We're going to fill all these buttons up with queries. This one is for displaying all learners. You must remember what your database looks like. So you know, there's your learner table. This one is just an example, okay? Here's the sport table, there's the learner table, and for displaying all learners, we then use our with dmpat2. Sorry, I'm just going over here now. This is the button click for displaying all learners. So we've got to go with the with dmpat2 begin and end. Then we say, then we quote the query name, and our query component name is called query pat over here. So I'll say query pat dot active equals false. Then we say query pat dot sql dot text, because we're actually sending a string to access. And then we say query pat dot active equals true. Now, of course, if we want to have everything displayed in neat column widths, we use our set grid column widths, and you know that little addition that we have created, the borrowed code, where we've put in our set grid column widths procedure. We pasted it here, this procedure, which was our borrowed code, and we just pasted it underneath the implementation section. Now we can go and call that procedure every time we connect to an ADO table component, or in this case using a query component. I'm calling set grid column widths with the parameter of the database grid name. Now this database grid is called dbgrid1. I'm just going to keep it as that. So this setup here, set of code, we can copy and paste into all of our query button click events. Wherever we want to do a query, we're just going to go and put that code there, because we're going to use the same skeleton structure in all queries. Okay, this one's already been put in, and there it is. Okay, so we have that set up for all our queries. We're ready to go run the queries. Now the queries are going to go into those quotation marks. It's a string that we are sending to access via this instruction. So once it gets to access, then access, this program over here will understand the code. Right, so the code for displaying all learners. Whenever you're displaying, and these, by the way, this setup is only for displaying queries. In grade 12, you'll learn about making hard drive changes to the database using queries. You won't use this setup, you use a different set of coding. But for just displaying, which is the main purpose of queries, we're just displaying something in memory. You're not making any changes to the actual tables. We're just displaying things from the table. If you want to display all the learners, we do simple select. Select is the word that we use for display. If you want to display all the columns, you say select star, and then the from statement is telling the query, with the database, which table are we displaying everything from. Select star from learner. If I run the program, you'll see right, with dm pat, pat dm. Sorry, I just had a bit of I used the wrong wording over here for this one. That's just processor telling me that I did something wrong. Query pat. Don't tell me I've done that for everyone now. With pat dm, not dm pat. So obviously all of these are, I'll just fix that up. Pat dm, query pat, because I copied and pasted the wrong code. Okay, that wasn't a good idea. Now I'm wasting your time. But remember, guys, when we make mistakes, that's how we learn. So maybe my mistake will help you learn. Pat dm. Right. So I'm going to the tab sheet where the queries are. Display all learners, and there it is. If you want to display it in alphabetical order, we can just use the select star, and then we say order by. Select star from learner, order by learner name. Okay. If you want to display only a few fields from, or columns, fields or columns, from this learner table, we say class games 1 and learner name. Then we put them in here, learner name, comma, class, comma, games 1. So there's the fields that we want to display from learner, the table called learner. Order by learner name means it's going to be in alphabetical order. If you want it in reverse alphabetical order, just add a DESC at the end. Otherwise it defaults to automatic order from lowest to highest. That order by will work with integers as well as strings and every other, and dates, all the data types. So we'll go and display it there. So now we've only got those 3 fields, and we've got in reverse alphabetical order there. So that's done. Next one, display all sport. So it's the same concept. Select star from sport. Simple as that. That is your simplest query ever that you can get. Select star from which table you want to choose, and that's what it'll do. And I've shown you how to choose specific fields and sorting. Sorting is order by. Now we're going to do a more difficult one here. The user is going to choose a sport, and we want to display the players for that sport. So let's have a look here. We want to choose a sport, and we want to display the player name for that sport. Can you see the sport name is going to come from the sport table, and the player name is going to come from the learner table, which means we've got 2 tables involved here. But we're not going to worry, because we have queries. We can do that quite easily. So first of all, we must remember that they're going to choose a sport from a combo box. So I've got a combo box here called CMB Sports. Double click the button. I've got my query ready here, but first let's go and get the sport from the combo box. And before I go into the data using the query, I go and allocate the sport, CMB sports.text. So we get the combo box contents, store it into the sport string, then we can go ahead with our query. So what do we want to display? So let's say they want to display the learner names only. So we're going to say select learner name. The trick with queries is that just put in your select statement what you want the user to see, the fields that you want the user to see. So we just want to see the learner name. And where does the learner name come from? It comes from the learner table, doesn't it? But we want to display the sport as well. So select the learner name sport. Okay, what else do we want to display? Let's say we want to display the fee. Okay, now so that you can see this query, I'm going to put it on different lines using my concatenation symbol, that plus sign, so that you can see the different the code clearly. The thing with SQL, you have to make sure you keep your spaces. There must be a space after the commas. There must be a space between each word. So because you see when I've joined up the string here, this is one string, I'm joining it to a second string over here. I'm making sure that there's a space in front of the from, because there's no space there. And if you put 2 spaces, then the processor will complain. Right. We want the sport and the fee also displayed, but that's coming from the sport table. The learner names coming from the learner table, so we have to include in our from statement, we have to include both the tables. So learner and sport must be included. But as soon as you include both tables, you have to quote the join in a where statement. Where learner dot. What is the join between the two tables? Well, you can see it quite clearly here in the relationship diagram, where learner sport ID equals sport.sport ID. So whenever you know that you're displaying things from two different tables, you've got to quote the primary key, foreign key fields in both the tables. So we're going to do that. Learner dot sport ID, which is coming from this table here. There's sport ID there, where that is equal to sport.sport ID. Okay, but there's another problem here. We have to quote, we want to choose, we want to basically display, sorry, not choose, you want to display only the learner names and the sports and the fees where the sport is equal to a certain name. Thinking about it, we don't actually have to display the sport, eh? No. Okay, we'll put it in there anyway. Doesn't matter. Sport, and what is sport? Sport name. It's not sport. I made a mistake. I'm so glad I did. You can't display sport. Sport is actually the table name. The field called sport name is what we want to display. Sport name. But we're only going to display where the sport name is. Sport name equals something that the user chose from the combo box. Okay, so we can't, we have to quote sport, the S sport. You see that field over there? The variable called sport. We actually have to have that in our query. But sport, S sport, let's just make it S sport, okay? S sport. The variable called S sport. I just changed variable name there because it's too similar to the actual name of the table. It's called sport. Anyway, let's go back. I digress. We have our query so far. What have we got? We've got a select statement with the field called learner name, sport name, and fee. These are the fields or column headings from two different tables. Therefore, we say in the from statement we have learner and sport. In our from statement, the from is all the tables that we are using, and then the where statement is our criteria. In this case, we're going to have two criteria. We're going to have learner.sport ID equals sport.sport ID, and sport name equals, now we have to join that to our variable. Can you see the variable is actually not part of our quote? But the variable has to be put in double inverted commas in order to go to access and be recognized as a legitimate sport name. So we have to put S sport in double inverted commas. There's an easy way and there's a long way. The easy way is just to say quoted str and put S sport in brackets. What is quoted str? It takes a string and puts two single inverted commas around it. If we didn't use quoted str, we'd have to do this. Put two inverted commas over here. You see there's two, and then that string's ended. Then we join that to our variable, and then we join that to that. Very messy, don't you agree? So it's much easier to just use the word quoted str, the function, should I say, it's a Delphi function called quoted str, which will wrap up this variable into two single inverted commas so that access will see the word, whatever S sport is representing. Now, we do that because S sport is a string. If it was sport ID, in other words an integer, then you would just say int to string, because you have to send everything you send to Access has to be as a string format. So if this was a number, okay, number 8 or whatever, then you've got to convert 8 to a string format using our int to string. But because we're sending a variable there called sport, we use quoted str, because strings that go to Access must be wrapped up in 2 single inverted commas on either side, but integers or numbers must just be converted to a string when we send it to Access. Right, so there it is. I'm going to run the program. There's one little problem here, and I don't know whether it's going to make a difference, but we'll see now. If I choose tennis 1, right, so it did work. What we normally like, the problem that I was envisaging was the fact that we have 2 conditions in our where statement, and normally we do the following: wrap it up in single inverted commas. Wrap it up in brackets. The 2 conditions in brackets. So sending it to Access with brackets around each of the 2 conditions, that one and this one. And as you can see, because I've got to put a bracket around the second condition over here in this string, I have to go and quote the bracket at the end. And this is important when you have many conditions, like maybe 3 or 4. So to use the brackets so that they are neatly separated with the ands and ors and so on. Right, next one. We're going to go on to display all tennis teams. Now, we want to find the teams that have got tennis in front of them. If I look at the database carefully, I go to the sport table, you'll see we have tennis 2, tennis 1, cricket 1. In this case, we want to get only tennis teams. So tennis 1 and tennis 2 and tennis 3 and so on. So we have to go and isolate the word tennis from each of the records or rows in that table called sport. We have to make sure we spell the fields correctly, or the columns, if you want to call them fields or columns. Sport name. The sport name is the field we're going to use, because sport name has got the name of the sport, and then whether it's 2 or 1, because the team is 1 or 2. It's just, you have to know your database. So if I want to get only tennis, I'm going to use string handling. So we're going to say select sport name from sport. Okay, I'm going to join that to another line here so that you can see where sport, where left. We're going to use our function called left. Now, I've supplied this list of string handlings. This is actually grade 12 summary which I created for them, and it contains there's many functions in SQL that we can use, but these are the ones I have used. So we're using left in our select statement, so we don't use it in a where statement. Okay, so we don't use it in a where. You're going to say select left sport name. It's quite a tricky function to use. Select left. We actually can use it in a where statement too, so let's try it in the where statement. Where left sport name comma and 1 2 3 1 tennis is spelled with 1 2 3 4 5 6 and like, we can use an equal sign, tennis. Now let's see if tennis has to be in double inverted commas. If you're going to go and try and find from the left, if you count from the left of the string 6, sport table, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is basically copying 6 characters from the left of the sport name. That's my sport name field. If it is tennis, we're going to display that sport name. Now if you look carefully at this, they're using left basically in our select statement. So let's see if it works in our where statement. And I'm going to use like here and see how that's worked. Oh wait, let's try it with equal and then we'll see. So run the program. Go to this, display all first team tennis. Nope, doesn't. Oops, sorry, did I put it in the wrong one? Oh yes, I clicked the wrong button. Sorry, when you click the wrong button, it doesn't have any queries in it, so can't do anything. Alright, so there it is, sport name like equals. Did I use the equal sign or a like operator? I used the equal sign and it worked. So here's using left, you can use right, and so on. Right is taking characters from the right of a string. So there's your string handling over there. Left is copying 6 characters from the left hand side of a string, and when you see it's equal to tennis, then we're displaying that sport name. That is what that query is doing. Right, sorry about the delay over there. Now display all first teams. Now we'll use the right. Okay, to display all first teams. Why do I know that? Well, we're going to copy from the right one character. So if we're copying from the right, one character from the right, then we can use that in a query. So what do we want to display? We want to display all sport names. Select sport name from sport. You've got to say which table you're using all the time. Where right sport name comma 1 equals, and we have to quote the 1 in double inverted commas. Do you see that? SQL wants the strings. Why? Because that 1 is actually a part of a string called sport name. Now if you have a look at the right function over there, there it is. You can also use it in our select statement itself, but in this case we use it in our where statement, where the first character from the very right of a string is, in this case, a 1. Now I had to put that 1 in 2 single inverted commas on either side of the 1, just like over here in the previous query we had to put 2 single inverted commas on either side of the word tennis. So let's go and see if it works. Oops, we have errors. Why? Oh, didn't use my plus sign because I'm joining 2 strings here so that you can see. Right. Oops, missing SQL property. Oh, did I click the wrong button again? Yes, I did. Sorry about that, folks. Better make sure I click the right button to play all first teams. Oh, I put it in the wrong place. Sorry about that again. Oh dear, I put it in the wrong place. It was this place where it was supposed to be. Cut that out and put it in the right button. Click event. Right. There it is, cricket 1, tennis 1. Works perfectly fine. So we don't have to use the like operator, we can use equal. We use like, we use wildcards. We'll get to that next year, don't worry about it now. This year you have to know these things that I'm telling you for your pat. Okay, lowest number of games, 1. So we're going to use what we call aggregate functions, but we're just using them simply. And what we mean by that is the sum, the min, the max. You all know that from Excel, where we use sum, but it's not quite the same. Let's go find them over here. Sorry, I'm making you dizzy. Here's max, min, AVG. There's also count. Those are all we call aggregate functions. We do calculations, but we do it in the select statement, in the select part. So you must remember that we use it in select. So select, so what we want is the lowest number of games, 1. Select min, and where do we find games 1? Games 1 is in the learner table. You've got to go to you'll see there's a games 1 field over there. We can see that it says 2 there, but our query is going to display it. Select min, games 1. Which table was it again? I can hear you all say the learner table from learner. And that's it. You don't have to have a where statement. The where statement was all our criteria. Remember we used it in the other couple of queries. So we have 3 sections of a query. The select statement, where we put in our fields or column headings that we want to display. In this case, we want to display the lowest games 1. And then the second section is the from statement, where you choose the table that you're going to use. And then the where statement, which we did in the previous queries, is where we have our criteria. We run the program. Check it out. Lowest number of games, 1. There it is. Oh, looks like expression 1000. That doesn't look very pretty, does it? No. So guess what we do? We use as, and then we write. You can use, if you want to have 2 separate words, use square brackets around it. So if you can have a space in your as. So this is like just displaying the field with a nice pretty name. Okay. So I put an as there. That means Access is going to display this calculation with that heading. And I put square brackets because in Access, if you're going to use for your headings, if you're going to, or table names or column headings, if you've got 2 different words with a space between, then you have to use square brackets. If I had games 1 with no spaces, then you don't use the square brackets. Okay. So that will look like that. Right, next one is also an easy one. Average fee for all sport. So average is our other another aggregate function, in other words, a calculation that we do on a field that we use it in the select section, the display area. We're going to say select AVG. That's the name of the function. What do we want to get the average of? The average fees for all sports. So where do we find fees? So we go to our table, go and check it out. Sport table's got the fee column. There it is, spelled F-E-E. If you use a capital F-E-E or any other spelling, then Access will complain. Select average fee from sport. But you've got to spell your table names. That's the table name sport. So you have to spell your table name correctly as well. But of course, average fee was going to give our have a column heading that's not going to be readable. We don't know what it means, so we go and put in our average fee, our as statement, which will give that display of that calculation a nice name. Right, and that is all that you need to know for grade 11 SQL. And next year, oh, there's one more thing. That doesn't look very pretty. It says 77.53333. Well, why don't we want to make it look better than that? Not so. So what we can do is we can round the average fee to 2 decimal places. Okay, I'll put round, then I'll put my fee inside there, comma, and 2, saying that rounded to 2 decimal places, please. And then we run the program. Let's see what it looks like. Yes, it's got 2 decimal places. That's good. But what if we wanted to have as currency? We want to, you know, to look like money. So what we're going to do is use our format function. AVG, comma, and then using the double inverted comma button on your keyboard, currency, the double inverted comma button on your keyboard. Now these are the things that you have to memorize. There's no way around it. You know, you just got to memorize these things so when you write your exams in grade 12 that you can do the questions, you know. So as you can see, there's the whole query. We select average fee, we calculate the average fee, but we want to format it to look like currency, so currency must be in double inverted commas, and there's a comma there, so there are 2 parameters in our format function. The as is going to give it a nice column name for the display, and then the from part is telling you which table it's from. Right, so I might have made a few mistakes along the way here, but hopefully you learned from them. Always learn from your mistakes and other people's, and we'll see you soon.